Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Rain struck the stone courtyard like thrown gravel, sharp and relentless, soaking the gathered pack beneath a sky the color of bruises. Alara stood barefoot on the cold rock, wrists bound with silver cord that burned her skin, her dress torn at the hem where hands had dragged her forward. The elders' torches flickered, lighting faces carved from judgment and fear. Across from her, the Alpha's throne stood empty until the midnight bell began to toll. 1 strike, 2. The sound crawled into her chest. Whispers swelled, marked. The word hissed like a curse. Alara's gaze dropped to her shoulder where a crescent brand glowed faintly beneath rain-slick fabric, heat pulsing in time with the bell. She hadn't asked for it. She hadn't known what it meant. Yet the crowd leaned back as if she carried rot. Her sister's eyes avoided hers. Her mother wept without sound. Then a howl rose from the forest, deep, fractured, wrong, and the bell stuttered as if the night itself hesitated. The elders shouted orders. Guards tightened their grip. Someone cried that the Alpha had fallen. Someone else screamed that the brand was impossible. Alara's heart slammed so hard it hurt. The howl came again, closer now, threaded with pain and fury, and something in her answered, a pull like a tide turning. She tasted iron and rain. Memories flashed. Dreams of moonlit paths she'd never walked, a shadow watching from trees, a voice saying her name like a promise. The silver cord smoked against her skin, the pain sharp enough to steal her breath. "Confess," an elder demanded, face slick with rain. "Name the monster who marked you." Alara shook her head, water streaming down her lashes. She had no name to give, only the certainty that whoever howled belonged to her in a way words could not explain. A shape burst from the tree line, moving too fast to track, all black fur and fractured light. Wolves scattered, torches fell. The creature skidded to a halt between Alara and the throne, shoulders heaving, eyes burning an impossible blue. He was wrong. Too large, too scarred, the air around him trembling as if the world rejected his presence. The brand on Alara's shoulder flared white-hot, pain and warmth together, and the creature staggered as though struck. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "He shouldn't exist," someone whispered. The creature lifted his head, gaze locking on Alara, and in that look was recognition so raw it stole her breath. Guards lunged. The creature roared, the sound breaking stone, and the silver cord snapped like wet thread. Chaos exploded. Alara fell, hands scraping rock, rain blinding her. Strong. Arms caught her before she hit the ground, heat flooding her frozen skin. She looked up into a man's face, half-shadowed, scars crossing his jaw, eyes still burning blue beneath the moon. "Run," he said, voice rough, threaded with fear, not for himself but for her. Arrows flew. The man turned, shielding her, and pain tore through him as silver bit deep. He growled, a sound swallowed by thunder, and shoved Alara toward a shattered gate. "You are marked," he said, breath ragged. "And so am I." The night split with another howl as he shifted again, bones cracking, fur swallowing skin, and Alara ran into the rain, heartbreaking and igniting all at once, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. Alara ran until the world narrowed to breath and pain, until rain soaked her hair flat against her skull and the forest blurred into streaks of black and silver. Branches tore at her arms, mud sucked at her feet. Behind her, the pack's shouts fractured into echoes, then faded. She collapsed beneath a bent pine, chest burning, palms raw. The brand on her shoulder dimmed from fire to warmth, a steady pulse that refused to fade. She pressed shaking fingers to it and felt comfort where there should have been fear. When the rain softened, memory crept in, unwelcome and sharp. She remembered being small, following her mother through market smoke, the smell of bread and iron. She remembered learning to keep her head down, her voice soft, her hopes folded small enough not to offend. The night she turned 16, the elders had tested her blood and found nothing special. Relief had followed, mixed with shame. Ordinary meant safe. Ordinary meant invisible. She had chosen ordinary. She had never chosen this mark, this pull, this impossible alpha, who looked at her like she mattered more than the moon itself. They had met weeks earlier on a ridge above the old quarry, a place no one claimed. Alara had gone there to think, to breathe without eyes measuring her worth. The moon had been thin as a blade. She'd sensed him before she saw him, a weight in the air, a hush among insects. He stood at the tree line, half lit, scars pale against dark skin, watching like he feared the light. She should have run. Instead, she asked his name. He hesitated, then said, "Kyle," as if testing whether it could exist between them. They spoke little. Silence felt safer. He told her he traveled alone. She told him she wanted to leave but didn't know how. He smiled then, soft and sad, and said leaving was a skill learned by failing to stay. On the third night, when the moon rose heavy and red, something in the air snapped. He stepped closer, breath rough, and warned her not to touch him. Alara touched him anyway, and the mark burned into being. Kale vanished after that night, leaving only boot prints and the ache of absence. Alara returned to her days, pretending nothing had changed, hiding the brand beneath sleeves, hiding the warmth that spread when night fell. Rumors grew, wolves restless, borders thinning, elders arguing behind closed doors. She learned fragments, an alpha born wrong, power split between man and beast, exiled before he could rule, a bloodline erased from records, its name forbidden. Those stories felt distant, like myths meant to scare children into obedience. Then the dream started, running through frost, a hand at her back, a voice calling her home. She woke with tears she couldn't explain. When Kale returned in the courtyard, bleeding and blazing, truth slammed into her. He was the alpha who shouldn't exist, and she was marked as his mate. Now, beneath the pine, Alara forced herself to stand. The forest breathed around her, damp and alive. She sensed movement before she heard it. Kale emerged from shadow, human again, shirt torn, blood dark on his side. He swayed, teeth clenched, pride holding him upright. "They'll hunt you," he said, words clipped. "They'll use you to reach me." Alara stepped forward, without thinking, hands hovering near his wound. He flinched, then stilled as her warmth seeped into him. The brand glowed softly, his breath eased. "I didn't know," she whispered. Kale met her gaze, something like wonder breaking through fear. "Neither did I," he said. Thunder rolled. Somewhere far off, a horn sounded. Kyle straightened, decision hardening his features. "We go east," he said. "Past the river, past the old stones." Alara nodded, heart pounding, knowing the path ahead would burn away everything she'd been, and that she was ready to follow. At dawn, they reached the river, swollen and loud, slate water gnawing its banks. Kyle waded first, teeth bared against the cold, holding Alara's hand as the current pulled. On the far side, he staggered, dropping to one knee, breath steaming. Alara tore fabric, pressed it to his wound, and felt the brand answer, warmth knitting skin beneath her palms. The river quieted her thoughts. She remembered lessons about borders, how water blurred claims and erased scent. Wolves would slow here. Kyle watched the tree line, listening, then nodded once. They moved east through reeds and stone until the old road appeared, broken and mossed, leading toward the hills where the stones stood like teeth. Alara's legs shook, fear and resolve tangling tight. When she slipped, Kale caught her, eyes fierce with apology. "I won't fall," he said to himself as much as her. She believed him because she had to, because believing felt like choosing life. Beyond the bend, smoke lingered from abandoned fires, proof others had passed, and Alara felt the land watching, weighing her courage, waiting to see whether she would turn back or keep walking into the unknown with him, despite the fear pounding behind her ribs. They followed the road until noon, when heat burned off the mist and insects rose in clouds. Kyle kept distance, as if afraid to touch her, though his eyes tracked every step she took. Alara studied him, when she could, noting the careful way he moved, the pauses when pain threatened to bend him. He spoke little, but when he did, truth edged each word. He told her of exile, of elders who feared what they could not control, of a birth beneath an eclipsed moon that split his power wrong. They said balance was broken, he said. They said I was a mistake. Alara listened, anger sharpening her spine. She told him of being overlooked, of learning to be small to survive. Their stories braided tight, shame answering shame. At a ruined milepost they stopped, sharing water and silence. The brand hummed. Kyle's hand hovered near hers, then withdrew. Alara closed the space herself, fingers lacing. He inhaled, steadying, and for the first time smiled without flinching. Above them a hawk circled, shadow sliding over stone, and Alara felt chosen not by fate alone, but by the quiet bravery of staying when leaving would have been easier for both. They reached the stones by dusk, pillars rising from heather like broken crowns. The air pressed heavy, humming with old power. Kale stiffened, scars paling. "This place remembers," he warned. As if summoned, figures stepped from the hills, scouts with ash on their cheeks, blades low but ready. Alara's stomach dropped. The lead scout recognized Kyle and spat. "You should be dead." Kale lifted his chin, calm, threading his voice. "I am alive." The scout's gazes slid to Alara, to the glow beneath her sleeve. Murmurs sparked, one advanced, silver flashing. Kale shifted halfway, bones creaking, stopping himself with visible effort. Alara stepped forward, heart hammering, and raised her marked shoulder. The glow flared, not a threat but a shield. The scout froze, eyes wide. "The mark binds," Alara said, surprised by her steadiness. "And it forbids blood here." Silence fell. The stone seemed to lean closer. After a breath that lasted forever, the scouts backed away. Fear battling obedience, leaving them path open. Kyle exhaled shakily, meeting Alara's eyes with awe, knowing the world had tilted, and that her courage had carved a law older than any elder's decree, written in stone and heartbeat together under the listening sky above. Night camped around the stones, stars sharp as frost. Kale tended the fire with practiced care, keeping smoke low. Alara washed blood from his side. The wound had closed to a pale seam. She marveled, then worried at the cost. "What happens to you when I heal you?" she asked. Kale considered, eyes reflecting flame. "It takes time from me," he said, "but you give it back." The honesty hurt and healed at once. They shared bread, crumbs catching on smiles. The world felt briefly kind. Then a horn sounded again, nearer now. Kyle rose, wolf just beneath skin. "They won't stop," he said. "Not while I live." Alara stood with him, fear tightening into purpose. "Then we make them see," she said. The brand warmed in agreement. Kyle touched her cheek, reverent, a promise without words. Above, clouds swallowed the moon, and the fire guttered as footsteps circled. Steel whispered, shadows multiplied, and Alara centered her breathing, remembering the river, the road, the stones. Choosing to be brave, not because she felt strong, but because running would break her. Kale stepped forward, shoulders squared, ready to answer the hunt with truth, even if it cost everything he loved her. The attack came fast. Arrows hissed. Kale lunged, shifting fully, a black arc tearing the dark. Alara moved as he had taught her, staying close to stone, raising the mark when steel flashed. A blade struck the glow and rang like a bell, skidding away. Wolves faltered. Kale bowled through them, not killing, breaking lines, roaring law into the night. Alara shouted names she did not know, commanding stop, and some listened, terror cracking obedience. At the edge of firelight, an elder stepped forward, face carved with resolve. "This ends now," he said. Kale skidded to a halt, blood slicking fur. Alara stepped between them, heart in her throat. "It ends when you admit the truth," she said. The elder's gaze flicked to the stones, to the sky. Silence stretched. Somewhere, Dawn breathed. The elder lowered his blade. "The Alpha lives," he said, voice breaking, "and the mark stands." The hunt dissolved. Alara sagged into Kale's arms as first light spilled gold. Around them, the forest exhaled, witnesses retreating, history resetting its spine, and Alara understood survival could look like love, chosen openly, under a forgiving sun after the longest night finally passed, without chains or fear binding them forever. Morning broke clean and cold, washing the stones in pale gold. Alara woke with Kale's cloak around her shoulders, the fabric heavy with his scent. Pine, smoke, iron. For a moment, peace fooled her into stillness. Then memory surged back. The hunt, the elder's surrender, the truth spoken aloud. Kyle stood a short distance away, scanning the hills, jaw tight. He looked carved from vigilance, every line a promise and a warning. Alara rose, joints aching, and joined him. Below the stones, scouts lingered at the edge of sight, uncertain what law ruled now. The brand rested warm against her skin, no longer flaring, simply present, like a steady hand at her back. "They'll regroup," Kale said. "Fear bends, then snaps." Alara nodded, tasting frost. She felt older than yesterday, not hardened, but sharpened. When Kale turned to her, she saw the cost of last night in the faint tremor of his hands. Guilt stirred. "I won't drain you," she said. Kale shook his head. "You don't take," he replied. "You anchor." The words settled in her bones, heavier than fear, lighter than hope. They moved south along the ridge, choosing daylight paths that forced witnesses. Alara noticed how Kale kept his pace measured, refusing the wolf's speed, letting scars breathe. At a spring, she knelt and washed, the water biting. Her reflection startled her, eyes brighter, posture straighter, a woman who had stepped through fire and kept walking. Kyle watched without intruding, respect woven into every glance. When she rose, she found him studying the mark, not with hunger, but wonder. "It shouldn't exist," he said quietly. "The elders erase bonds like this after the sundering." Alara frowned. "Erase doesn't mean gone." Kale smiled, small and fierce. He told her of old laws broken when power grew greedy, of mates chosen to balance wildness, not to crown kings. The sundering had severed those bonds, leaving alphas ruling alone, unchecked. Alara felt anger bloom, not loud but deep. "Then maybe we're not wrong," she said. "Maybe we're remembering." Kale's breath caught, and in that hitch she saw the boy exiled for being too much, and the man choosing restraint so others could feel safe. By midday, they reached a village straddling the road, smoke curling from chimneys, life stubborn and ordinary. Eyes followed them, curiosity, fear, calculation. Kale slowed, hands open, a visible choice. Alara stepped beside him, shoulder bare beneath the cloak. Murmurs rippled. A woman with flour on her apron gasped. A child pointed, unafraid. The innkeeper blocked the door, weighing risk. Alara met his gaze. "We'll pay," she said, voice steady, "and we won't bring trouble." The man hesitated, then nodded once. Inside, warmth and stew wrapped them. Kyle ate carefully, as if apologizing to each bite. Alara listened as villagers whispered of restless borders, of elders arguing, of a missing alpha named only in curses. A traitor leaned close. "They say the wrong alpha walks again," he said. Kale didn't react. Alara did. "They say many things," she replied, smiling. The traitor studied her mark, then looked away, unsettled. When they left, a loaf pressed into Alara's hands by the flower woman felt like a blessing, small and brave. They camped in a hollow where wind bent grass into waves. Kyle taught Alara how to read tracks, how to hear fear in the quiet. She taught him how to rest without guilt, sitting close until his shoulders eased. Dusk bled purple, fireflies stitched light through shadow. If we reach the council vale, Kale said, we can force judgment. Alara pictured elders, cold and careful, and felt dread coil. They'll try to use me, she said. Kale nodded. They already are. Silence stretched. Alara surprised herself by laughing, soft but real. Then they'll find I'm not small anymore. Kale laughed too, the sound startled and bright. He grew serious. If they threaten you... We face it together, Alara finished. The brand warmed, approving. Above them, clouds gathered, promising storm. Alara leaned into Kale's side, feeling the world narrow to heat and trust. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a cliff. It felt like a road dangerous and open, waiting for feet brave enough to claim it. The storm hit after midnight. Rain flattened grass, thunder cracking close. Kel rose at the first distant howl, wolf humming beneath skin. Alara woke with him, heart steady. Shapes moved beyond firelight. Too many, too organized. Not a hunt, Kel said. A test. A voice called from the dark, smooth and cruel. Bring us the mark, it said, and we'll spare the mistake. Alara stepped forward before Kale could stop her. Lightning split the sky, illuminating cloaked figures, blades bright. No, she said, calm cutting through rain. You'll listen. The brand flared, not burning, commanding. The ground thrummed. Kale felt it too, eyes widening as the land answered her call. Wolves faltered, the voice cursed. Alara lifted her chin. You fear what you broke, she said, and what you can't control. Thunder rolled approval. The cloaks withdrew, melting into rain. Kale exhaled, awe and fear warring. You're changing the rules, he said. Alara took his hand, grounding him. So are you, she replied. Dawn crept gray and gentle. Somewhere far off, bells rang. Not alarm, but summons. Alara and Kale stood together as the storm passed, knowing Chapter 4 had ended, not with safety, but with proof that the world was already bending around them, reshaping itself to fit a truth too long denied. They reached the council vale by late afternoon, a bowl of green stone and wind-carved pillars, where sound carried and secrets rarely survived. Alara felt the place before she saw it, pressure gathering behind her eyes, the brand warming as if greeting an old companion. Kyle slowed, shoulders squared, breath measured. Figures ringed the veil, elders in ash-gray cloaks, guards with silver-threaded armor, observers pretending neutrality. No one blocked their path. That was worse. Alara stepped into the center, boots scraping stone, rain-damp cloaks snapping in the wind. Murmurs spread like ants. Kale stood half a pace behind her, deliberately not looming, deliberately choosing restraint. An elder lifted a staff etched with moons. You bring disorder, she said. Alara met her gaze, heart steady. We bring truth, she replied. A ripple passed through the crowd. Kyle felt it then, the old pull to dominate, to silence. He crushed it down, remembering the river, the road, Alara's hand. The elder's eyes flicked to the mark. That bond was severed, she said. Alara raised her shoulder. It healed, she answered, and the stone beneath her feet hummed agreement. Judgment began with questions sharpened into blades. Who marked her? When? Why? Alara answered simply, refusing to flinch. Kyle spoke when asked, voice clear, recounting exile without pleading. Faces hardened. A counselor leaned forward, smile thin. Power split breeds ruin, he said. History proves it. Alara stepped closer to the ring, heat rising. History proves fear. Lies, she said. You broke balance because you wanted control. Gas flared. The counselor sneered. You are bait, he said. A vessel. Kale moved, then stopped himself, knuckles white. Alara felt his restraint and chose her next words carefully. If I were bait, she said, the land would reject me. She pressed her palm to the stone. The veil answered, wind lifting, pillars singing low. Elders stiffened, the staff trembled. You feel it, Alara said softly. This place remembers what you erased. Silence thickened. Somewhere, a guard swallowed. Cal's chest ached with pride and terror braided tight. The council had not expected this. Proof without violence, authority without blood. A challenge followed, inevitable and cruel. If the bond stands, the staff-bearer said, prove it costs you. Silver was brought. Cale tensed. Alara's pulse raced. No, Cale said. Alara squeezed his hand once and stepped forward. The blade kissed her skin. Pain flared. Cale staggered as if struck. Breath ripping free, scars blazing. The crowd recoiled. Alara forced herself not to scream. Grounding through the stone, through Cale's presence, she felt time drain from him, felt it return as she steadied, the exchange equalizing. Enough, she said, voice shaking but unbroken. The blade withdrew. Blood beaded, then sealed. Kyle steadied, eyes wild. That is balance, Alara said, tears burning. Shared cost. Shared strength. The council wavered. A younger elder whispered, awe cracking her mask. It's real. The staff-bearer lowered her weapon, hands trembling. For the first time, fear shifted seats, settling not on Alara, but on the old lie cracking under light. The verdict fractured along fault lines. Some elders demanded imprisonment. Others argued recognition. Voices rose. Cale felt anger surge, Wolf snarling for release. Alara touched his wrist, anchoring him. Let them argue, she murmured. We're already changing it. As if summoned, messengers arrived breathless, reports of borders calming, of packs standing down, of scouts refusing orders. The land's answer was spreading. The counselor who had sneered laughed bitterly. You'll start a war, he said. Alara faced him, sadness cooling her anger. You already did, she replied. We're ending it. The staff-bearer exhaled, age showing. There will be terms, she said. Trials, Cale nodded. There always are. Alara felt resolve harden. We accept, she said. Together. The word echoed. Together. The council recessed, confusion buzzing like insects. Outside the ring, villagers gathered. Hope and fear intermingled. A child slipped through and pressed a flower into Alara's hand. Alara smiled, strength renewed by the simplest faith. Night fell as the council returned, faces set. Provisional recognition, the staff-bearer announced, until proof endures. It was not victory, but it was ground gained. Cale bowed, formal and restrained. Alara inclined her head, accepting the weight. As they left the veil, whispers followed, not curses now, but questions. At camp, Cale finally shook, exhaustion crashing in. Alara held him, counting breaths, giving back what she had taken. I was afraid, he admitted. So was I, she said. They laughed softly, relief breaking through strain. Above them, stars burned steady. Alara understood then that Chapter 5 was not about winning approval. It was about choosing each other in daylight, under scrutiny, and surviving without becoming the monsters fear demanded. Tomorrow would test them again. Tonight, they rested, knowing the world had felt their bond and shifted just enough to make space for what should have existed all along. Dawn in the vale came thin and uncertain, light filtering through low cloud like breath held too long. Alara woke before Kyle, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, slower than yesterday, deeper, as if the land itself were lending him strength. She rose quietly, stepping beyond the camp's edge where dew clung to grass and chilled her ankles. The brand was calm now, a quiet ember. For the first time since the courtyard, she felt space inside her chest, space to think. Provisional recognition meant watchers, spies, rules written to bend them back into submission. She understood that truth with a clarity that surprised her. Power did not always roar. Sometimes it waited. When Cale joined her, cloak wrapped tight, he looked steadier but older, as though each choice carved years into him. They'll test us, he said. Alara nodded. Then we won't flinch. Below the ridge, horns sounded, summons, not alarms. The council wanted movement, not rest. Alara squared her shoulders, knowing Chapter 6 would not be about survival alone, but endurance under slow pressure designed to make them fail without ever drawing blood. The first test came disguised as mercy. An elder announced that Khal must return to the borderlands alone to settle unrest, while Alara remained in the Vale for her protection. The words tasted false. Alara felt Kale's anger spike, hot and sharp, then bank down. Separation was the point. No, Alara said calmly. Murmurs rose. The elder frowned. This is procedure. Alara stepped forward, voice even. The bond is balance, she said. You break it. You break what you just recognized. Silence followed. Kale watched her, something fierce and tender twisting in his chest. Another elder intervened, cautious. Then she accompanies you, he said, under guard. It was a leash, but Alara accepted. On the road north, flanked by silver-threaded riders, tension coiled tight. Villages watched from doorways, measuring rumor against reality. Kale spoke to leaders, listened more than he commanded. Alara watched fear soften into curiosity, then relief. Each calm border was a quiet victory. Each night, guards listened as the land settled, and some slept easier than they had in months. Resistance surfaced at the third settlement, sharp and sudden. A pack leader refused Kale's authority, blade bare, pride bleeding into recklessness. You're half-made, he spat. She's a weakness. Alara felt the insult land like a slap, old instincts urging her to step back, to shrink. She didn't. Kyle lifted a hand, stopping violence before it sparked. Test me, he said, but hear her first. The leader laughed. Alara met his eyes. You're tired, she said. You've been ordered to bleed for fear that isn't yours. The leader hesitated, startled. The brand warmed, not flaring, simply present. Wind shifted. The man lowered his blade. If this fails, he said, it's on you. Cal nodded. They worked through the night, listening, negotiating, setting shared patrols instead of threats. By morning, the settlement stood quieter. The guards whispered among themselves. Alara sensed something changing. Not approval yet, but possibility. Possibility frightened those who thrived on control far more than rebellion ever had. The fourth night brought poison, subtle and mean. Kyle's water tasted wrong. He stiffened, breath hitching. Alara caught him as his knees buckled, fear slicing clean. Guards scrambled. Accusations flew. Alara focused, pressing the brand, feeling the toxin like ice spreading. She steadied, drawing it into herself, pain lancing sharp and bright. Kale gasped as relief flooded back, but Alara shook, vision blurring. Kale held her, terror raw. Stop, he begged. She did barely, grounding through earth and breath until the poison bled harmlessly away. A guard confessed, shaking, orders whispered from the veil. Kyle's fury roared, wolf clawing for release. Alara anchored him, forehead to his chest. This is what they do, she whispered. Slow cuts. Kale nodded, grief cooling into resolve. Then we heal. Faster, he said. The guard was dismissed, not executed. Mercy rippled outward, confusing enemies more than blood ever could. By the time they returned south, word had raced ahead of them, of borders calm, of poison turned aside, of an alpha who listened and a marked woman who did not bow. The council received them with careful faces. Alara felt their unease like static. She stood taller anyway. When accusations surfaced, she answered with facts, with witnesses, with the quiet confidence of someone who had already survived worse than rumor. Kyle stood beside her, equal, unafraid. The staff-bearer watched them for a long moment, then inclined her head. Endurance proven, she said. For now. It wasn't trust. It was respect's beginning. That night, as they lay beneath open sky, Alara felt exhaustion settle deep and sweet. We're still here, she said. Kale smiled into her hair. Because you refused to disappear, he replied. Chapter 6 closed not with triumph, but with something sturdier. Proof that, under pressure meant to break them slowly, they had learned how to bend together without snapping, and the world was starting to notice. The summons came at twilight. A single bell struck low and slow, carrying across the veil like a held breath finally released. Alara felt it before she heard it. The brand warming, her spine straightening as if an unseen hand aligned her bones. Kyle laced his fingers through hers, steady, present. They walked together into the council ring where torches burned blue with resin, shadows stretching long and theatrical. Faces waited, elders, guards, observers who pretended distance while leaning forward to watch a fault line crack. The staff-bearer spoke without preamble. "There is dissent," she said. "An acclaim." A figure stepped from the shadows, hood falling back to reveal a counselor Alara recognized by his thin smile and careful lies. "The Alpha's existence endangers us," he said. "And the mark proves manipulation." Murmurs surged. Alara tasted copper. Kale breathed once, deeply. The counselor raised a sealed parchment. "By ancient right," he continued, "we invoke the trial of severance." The words hit like ice water. Alara's chest tightened. Severance meant pain measured and sanctioned, a ritual meant to prove bonds false by breaking them. Kale's grip tightened, then softened, a promise made in silence not to let fear decide. The bell rang again. The trial was accepted, whether they agreed or not. Preparation stripped them of comfort and illusion. Alara stood alone at the edge of the ring, cloak removed, shoulder bare to the cold. Kyle was led opposite her, chain symbolic but heavy with threat. The veil hushed. Alara closed her eyes and breathed, remembering the river's pull, the road's dust, the stone's song. When she opened them, Kyle watched her with an ache so open it steadied her. The officiant explained the ritual in precise, bloodless terms. Pain would pass through the bond. Truth would remain. Alara nodded once. Kale nodded once. The blade sang as it rose. When it cut, the world narrowed to heat and light. Alara cried out despite herself, pain searing bright, then felt Cole's answering gasp ripple through her bones. She grounded, hands pressed to stone, drawing steadiness up from the earth. The blade cut again. Kel fell to one knee, breath ragged. Alara felt his hurt and held it, refusing to let it tip into dominance or despair. The brand flared, not wild, not violent, balanced. Gasps followed. The officiant faltered. "Again," the counselor demanded. The staff-bearer hesitated. Alara lifted her head. "Once more," she said, voice shaking but sure. The blade fell. Pain surged, then avened, shared, and returned. The bond did not break. It held. The veil erupted, not in cheers, but argument. Elders shouted over one another. Guards shifted uneasily. Alara swayed, caught by Kyle as chains clattered free. He held, her with care born of terror mastered. "It's done," he whispered. "You did it." Alara laughed weakly, tears tracking warm. "We did." The counselor lunged, fury snapping restraint. "This proves nothing," he snarled. "Power like this will rule us." Alara met him, steady. "No," she said. "Fear will." The land answered her certainty with a low hum. Wind curled around the ring, lifting cloaks, bending flame. The staff-bearer struck her staff hard. "Enough," she commanded. Silence fell, shocked. "The trial stands," she said. "The bond stands." The counselor backed away, pale and shaking, his certainty unraveling under witness and wind. Alara felt the watchers shift, something brittle breaking open. Not love, not loyalty, credibility. Kale straightened, scars pale, eyes clear. "I will not rule by fear," he said, "nor by erasing what you are afraid to understand." A young elder stepped forward, voice small but carrying. "Then show us another way." The request hung there, fragile and brave. Alara squeezed Kale's hand. This was the turn she had hoped for and feared in equal measure. They left the ring under escort that felt less like a cage and more like a corridor opening. Night wrapped them, stars sharp and close. Alara's pain ebbed into ache. Kale tended her carefully, reverent as prayer. "You shouldn't have had to," he said. Alara smiled tiredly. "Neither should you have been erased," she replied. They sat together, sharing warmth, letting the world settle. From beyond the camp came voices, arguments softening into questions, questions into plans. Change made noise when it started. Kale rested his forehead against hers. "If they ask me to lead," he said, uncertain, "I don't know what kind of alpha to be." Alara closed her eyes. "Be the one who listens," she said, "and lets others be whole." Kale exhaled, relief loosening something tight. "With you," he said, not a question. Alara nodded. The brand warmed content. Somewhere, a bell rang. Not a summons, but a signal of closure. The trial of severance had ended not with separation, but with proof that unity could withstand sanctioned cruelty. Chapter 7 closed on a quiet miracle. Pain acknowledged, power shared, and a future no longer defined by what should not exist, but by what endured, because it refused to be broken. The days after the trial moved strangely, like a river slowed by ice but still flowing underneath. Alara felt eyes on her wherever she went, measuring, doubting, wondering. The veil no longer felt like a battlefield, but it wasn't safe either. It was a place holding its breath. Kyle walked beside her openly now. No chains, no guards close enough to pretend control. That alone unsettled the elders more than rebellion ever had. Alara noticed how people reacted to him differently. Some bowed, some stared, some looked away as if afraid to want something new. The brand stayed warm, steady, no longer flaring to defend, only reminding her she was not alone. At night, she dreamed of roots breaking stone, of moons no longer divided. She woke with a sense of responsibility, heavier than fear. This wasn't just about surviving trials anymore. The bond had become a question the whole world had to answer, and answers she was learning scared people far more than threats. The council's next move was quieter, and therefore more dangerous. Invitations arrived, private dinners, conversations framed as curiosity, offers wrapped in politeness. Alara attended some, declined others. Each time the same theme emerged, separation disguised as concern. You are young, you deserve safety. Power like his consumes. Alara listened, nodded, and left unchanged. Kale faced his own version, elders urging him to claim dominance, to finish what the bond started and rule without compromise. He refused, again and again, the word no costing him visibly each time. One evening, after a particularly tense meeting, Kale finally cracked. "They want me to become the thing they fear," he said, voice raw. Alara touched his chest, grounding him. "And you won't," she said simply. The certainty in her voice steadied him more than reassurance ever could. They were learning that resistance didn't always roar. Sometimes it endured. The breaking point came with blood, as breaking points often do. A messenger arrived at dusk. Breathless, eyes wild, a border pack loyal to the old counselor had attacked a neighboring settlement, blaming Kyle's unnatural existence for unrest. Homes burned. 2 children were injured. Alara felt the news like a punch to the chest. Kyle's wolf surged, fury blazing. For one terrifying moment, Alara thought he might finally unleash it. Instead, he went very still. "They want war," he said. "Then we deny them one." Alara understood instantly. If Call retaliated with force, every fear would be proven right. If he did nothing, people would suffer. The answer lay somewhere painful and precise between. "We go," Alara said. "Not to punish, to protect." Kyle nodded, resolve hardening into steel. They left before dawn, no council blessing, only witnesses watching them choose action over permission. They arrived to smoke and grief. Alara knelt with the injured, hands glowing softly as the brand lent warmth and steadiness. Kyle organized defenses, not commands, listening first, asking names, rebuilding trust brick by brick. When the attackers returned at night, expecting chaos, they found order instead. Wolves stood shoulder to shoulder with villagers. Alara stepped forward, torch in hand, light cutting through fear. "This ends," she said, voice carrying. "Not with your blood, with your choice." The attackers hesitated. Some lowered weapons, others fled. A few wept, shame breaking them open where rage had lived. Kyle never shifted. That mattered. By morning, the settlement still stood. Word traveled faster than fire ever had. The alpha who shouldn't exist had chosen restraint. The marked woman had chosen mercy. Together, they had rewritten the rules of response. When they returned to the Vale, the air felt different. Quieter, heavier. The council met them without ceremony. The staff-bearer looked older but clearer. "The land has answered," she said. "So have the people." Alara felt exhaustion settle deep, earned and honest. This wasn't victory yet, but it was something close to inevitability. That night, under an open sky, Kale finally asked the question he'd been holding back. "If they name me Alpha," he said, "will you stand with me when it costs you more than this?" Alara didn't hesitate. "I already am," she replied. The brand warmed, not flaring, not burning, simply present. Chapter 8 closed not with celebration, but with proof that change had crossed a line it could not retreat from, and the world was preparing, whether it wanted to or not, for a future shaped by what it had tried to erase. The night the council named Kyle Alpha arrived without banners or drums, only a wind that pressed low clouds against the veil and made torches gutter. Alara stood beside him at the ring's edge, palms damp, heart steady, while elders filed in with faces set like doors about to close. The staff-bearer spoke the title once, carefully, as if it might bite. Kyle bowed, not in submission but acknowledgement, and the land answered with a tremor that rolled underfoot. Relief rippled, then fear. Alara felt it spike when a shout cut through the crowd, sharp and furious. The counselor who had demanded severance stepped forward, flanked by armed loyalists, eyes burning with certainty. "This is treason, dressed as mercy," he said. Steel rang as blades cleared. Kyle inhaled, wolf surging, but Alara touched his wrist. Grounding him, she stepped into the open, cloak snapping, mark bright. "Stand down," she said, voice carrying. The loyalists hesitated. The counselor smiled thinly and raised a signal. From the hills came answering horns. The vale filled with movement. The naming had become a trap, and the night chose violence. Thunder answered, and Alara knew there would be no retreat for anyone present tonight anymore. Chaos broke the ring. Loyalists surged from the hills while villagers scrambled for cover. Kyle moved at once, voice cutting through panic, ordering lines to hold without pursuit. Alara stayed with him, raising the mark like a banner, light steadying those nearest. Arrows flew, stone chipped. A blade grazed Kyle's arm, silver singing. He grunted but did not shift. "Hold," he commanded again, and the word carried weight. Alara felt the land answer, not roaring but firming, roots tightening beneath feet. The counselor laughed and pressed forward, shouting for blood. Alara stepped into his path, fear burning clean into resolve. "Enough," she said. He struck at her, a feint meant to draw Kale out. Alara did not retreat. She grounded, drawing steadiness through stone and breath. The strike skidded against the glow and rang hollow. Gasps rippled. Kale seized the opening, disarming without killing, breaking lines with precision. Loyalists faltered as the ground hummed dissent. When the horns faltered, the night turned. Some dropped weapons, others fled. The counselor stood shaking, certainty cracking, as the veil chose restraint over ruin. Alara felt time slow, then snap forward, carrying consequences none of them could escape from this moment onward, together forever. The counselor tried to run. He made it 3 steps before the earth betrayed him, slick stone rising to catch his heel. He fell hard. Guards closed in, weapons ready. Cal raised a hand. "No executions," he said, voice ironed flat. Murmurs followed, disbelief and relief tangled. Alara knelt near the fallen man, meeting his eyes. "You taught them fear," she said quietly. "It ends now." The counselor spat, but the sound lacked force. The staff-bearer approached, staff heavy with years. "By witness of the veil," she declared, "you are stripped of voice and command." The sentence landed heavier than death. Loyalists melted away, some weeping, some ashamed. Kale turned to the crowd. "This is the rule," he said. "We defend, we listen, we do not erase." Alara felt the bond steady, not flaring content. The land hummed assent. The naming completed itself not with cheers, but with a collective exhale. Kale was alpha now, not because power was seized, but because violence had been refused at the edge where it would have been easiest. Witnesses carried the truth outward, faster than rumor, sealing a precedent that could not be quietly undone by fear or force ever again anywhere nearby. Afterward, exhaustion crashed in waves. Alara's knees trembled. Kale caught her, pressing his forehead to hers, breath uneven. "You stayed," he whispered. "So did you," she replied. They were given a moment beneath the stones while the veil settled. Plans formed around them, repairs, patrols, councils reshaped. Alara listened, offering when asked, refusing when pushed. She felt the weight of it now, leadership without illusion. Kale sought her eyes before every decision, not for permission, but alignment. At sunset, the staff-bearer approached alone. "The old law ends tonight," she said. "The bond returns." Alara felt tears sting. "Guard it," the elder added, voice soft. "People will try to use what they fear." Kale nodded. "We will," he said. When the elder left, Alara laughed quietly, the sound shaky and free. "They're learning," she said. Kale smiled. "So are we." The stars rose, clean and bright, and for the first time since the courtyard, Alara felt the future stretch wide instead of looming like a wall. Hope did not erase scars, but it lit a path forward, one deliberate step at a time, shared between two souls, choosing restraint over rage again and again until dawn felt earned by everyone present there. Night deepened, quiet settling like snow. Alara and Coil stood at the ring's edge, watching fires dim across the veil. "Chapter ends," Kale said softly, smiling at the word. Alara squeezed his hand. "The story doesn't," she replied. They turned together, ready to walk into what came next. Rule, repair, listening, love shaped by choice. Somewhere a bell rang closure, not command. The land breathed content. And in that breath, the alpha who shouldn't exist and the woman marked at midnight stood unbroken, having faced the worst, and refused to become it. Alara felt the weight of names fall away, replaced by work and care. Kale felt fear loosen, replaced by duty chosen freely. Together they would rebuild councils, teach restraint, honor grief, and protect children from lessons written in blood. Tomorrow would bring trials, but tonight held truth. Power shared can heal what power hoarded destroys. They stayed until stars thinned, breathing together, listening to the veil remember itself. The future waited, wide and demanding, but no longer cruel because it had been answered. By courage, by mercy, by balance, reclaimed at last. Nothing would erase the past, yet everything ahead could finally be different now for them altogether. Morning arrived gently, as if the world itself feared waking them too roughly after the night's reckoning. Pale light slid across the veil, touching stone and grass with care. Alara stood at the edge of the ring, cloak loose around her shoulders, watching people emerge from sleep into something new. There was no cheering, no sudden joy, only quiet work. Fires were rebuilt, broken stones stacked. Children carried water without being told. Kale moved among them without ceremony, helping lift beams, listening more than he spoke. This was what the title meant now, Alara realized. Not dominance, not awe, presence. The brand rested warm and steady, no longer reacting to danger, but to purpose. When Kale joined her, his smile was tired and real. "They're staying," he said. "Not because they must, Because they want to see if this holds. Alara nodded. So do I. The alpha who shouldn't exist had been named, challenged, and proven. What remained was the harder task, living in a way that justified survival. The future did not feel triumphant. It felt honest, and that felt stronger than victory. The first council under the new order convened at midday, not in the ring, but on open ground where anyone could stand and listen. Alara took her place beside Kyle, not elevated, not hidden. Elders spoke plainly. Some apologized. Others did not. Both were accepted. New laws were proposed slowly, tested aloud for cracks. Severance rituals were formally ended. Bonds were recognized as balance, not threat. Alara felt emotion rise unexpectedly, sharp behind her eyes. When asked to speak, she hesitated, then stepped forward. I was ordinary, she said simply. I learned to be small so others felt safe. This bond did not make me powerful. It made me whole. Murmurs followed, not agreement, not dissent, but recognition. Kyle watched her with something like reverence. When he spoke, it was brief. We will be judged by how we protect the smallest voices, he said, including when they disagree with us. That promise settled deeper than any decree. The land hummed, not loudly, but in approval that felt earned rather than demanded. By evening, messengers had arrived from distant packs, cautious but curious. Stories had traveled faster than armies ever could. An alpha who refused execution, a marked woman who stopped a war without spilling blood. Some doubted, some hoped. Alara welcomed them all with the same steady gaze. She answered questions honestly, admitted fear freely, refused to be mythologized. Kale did the same. When a young wolf asked what made him different from the alphas, before Kale thought carefully, I'm not, he said at last. I just don't rule alone. Alara felt the truth of that ripple outward, unsettling and relieving at once. Change rarely announced itself with thunder. It crept in through conversations, through choices repeated until they became habit. That night, as the veil filled with shared meals and low laughter, Alara realized something else had shifted too. She no longer felt like she was standing at the edge of a story. She was inside it, shaping it with her hands. Her voice, her willingness to remain visible. Later, beneath a sky scattered with stars, Alara and Kyle finally found stillness. They sat on the same stone where judgment had once loomed, legs brushing, fingers intertwined. The weight of everything they had survived pressed in, not painfully, but densely, like earth packed firm. Do you ever wish it had been easier? Kale asked quietly. Alara considered. She thought of the courtyard, the rain, the silver, cord burning. She thought of the road, the poison, the blade. She thought of fear and of choosing anyway. No, she said at last. Easy things don't teach the world how to change. Kale exhaled, resting his forehead against hers. I was told my existence was a mistake, he said. Alara smiled, soft and certain. Then the world needed the mistake. The brand warmed, not in warning, not in defense, but in quiet affirmation. Whatever magic had shaped it had finished its work. What remained was choice. When dawn came again, it did not feel fragile. It felt settled. The alpha who shouldn't exist stood openly in the light, unchallenged not because fear had vanished, but because it no longer ruled. Alara stood with him, not behind, not above, but beside, marked, not claimed. Together they watched the veil breathe into its new shape, imperfect and alive. The story that had begun in humiliation and pain closed in balance and resolve. Not because the world had become kind, but because it had been answered. And as they walked forward into days filled with work, love, and vigilance, one truth held steady as stone beneath their feet. What should not exist sometimes survives for a reason. To remind the world that broken rules can be mended, that power can be shared, and that midnight marks can lead, not to ruin, but to a dawn worth protecting forever. If this story moved you, even a little. Don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to support stories that choose heart over fear. Subscribe for more emotionally powerful werewolf romances where love rewrites destiny. Share this with someone who believes that being different doesn't mean being wrong. And tell me in the comments, would you choose balance and love, even if the whole world said you shouldn't exist?